Hey everybody, this is Carlos Ocelot, founder and CEO of G2 Esports, former professional gamer, and wonderful bodybuilder, as you may have known. Of course, you know me for that, pretty sure. And you're watching Dankan's channel. Thorin, my man. Enjoy.
Liquipedia is a collection of what are arguably the best esports Wikipedias that we have online. Now, in games like League of Legends, Gamepedia has been pretty good, particularly at times when they had money to staff the wiki. Obviously, you rely upon volunteers often with wikis. In theory, anyone can edit them, but obviously on the real main Wikipedia of the world, we all know some of those pages are gate-kept by certain high-level power users and admins, but in esports, almost anyone can edit them. But as a result, most people don't, and it ends up becoming a dedicated few who do. So Liquipedia brings a lot of value to not only the CSGO community, the League of Legends community. I know they have one of those now, even though it hasn't actually really taken off like Gamepedia. Dota 2, StarCraft and StarCraft 2, obviously, where they originally came from. These are very valuable resources. For me, they're essential to letting people very quickly look up information that otherwise if they Google, it might not find, they won't know where to go and find it. If there's a bazillion esports news and article websites out there, it's going to be really tough to search through stuff. Sometimes I have a hard time finding my own old articles, except I can remember the title and who I wrote them for. So in my own role as a historian, I know that this sort of thing helps me much more quickly look stuff up. I don't have to go and use my old research, which is in like text files. I don't have to Google my own tweets or comments. If you don't have any way of very quickly searching something, it's really tough to go through. Think of the analogy of if you knew there was a piece of information you needed in an encyclopedia, but there was no index, no way to look it up. You just had to search through, flick through pages randomly until you found the piece of information. The info's in there, it just take you forever to find it. Whereas if you had a keyword search or an index, you can find it almost immediately because you get aside all the stuff that's not relevant and get to the piece that is relevant. Hence why I've always found it hilarious that people are always like, anyone could just look up the results. It's like, first of all, you can only do that in the modern day. Secondly, some of the shit you're talking about looking up, I actually invented and came up with. And thirdly, I was there for it all. So I'm not just looking it up. I was there and I know what happened. But anyway, the big mistake, the never-ending mistake that Liquipedia has made and continues to make on a daily basis, on a second-by-second basis, is their decision to label tournaments so that the hierarchy of tiers goes top tier of tournament is called Premier, second tier of tournament is called Major. Now, beyond that, they go further down Minor and so on. Now, in CSGO, this means that an event like Blast Pro Series Istanbul, so the worst of the Blast Pro Series events that's been held so far, it was held last year at the exact same time as ESL 1 New York. And this was an event which you remember Astralis went to. Obviously, they're a refresh company, but aside from that, the other teams weren't that good. Like MIBR at the time wasn't a very good team. They were okay. They were like top 10, but not an elite team. You had NIP, who again, top 10, but not really that great. And then you had lesser teams who weren't that good. Meanwhile, at ESL New York, an event running simultaneously, you had Na'Vi and FaZe Clan and NRG and Team Liquid and Mousespots. You had a whole bunch of big names, top teams, elite squads, big performers. Now, at this Blast Pro Series Istanbul, which as you might have understood by the way I've just laid it out, Blast Pro Series event that only has one best of 3, the rest are best of 1s. Smaller event, doesn't have the biggest prize pool in the world, isn't the most prestigious tournament, didn't even have the best teams there. Nobody would consider that a major in the context of CSGO. In fact, we don't even consider massive events, except the ones that Valve officially calls them majors, as majors. But on Liquipedia, to this day, and from the moment it began, Blast Pro Series Istanbul has been labelled as a major. Meanwhile, IEM Katowice, the recent official Valve major, is labelled as a Premier tournament. If you go into Dota 2, this year's Bucharest Minor, held in January, is Liquipedia tier major tournament. While the upcoming MDL Disneyland Paris major, an official Valve major, although not run by Valve in this particular case, is a Premier tournament. You can see where this is going, right? They are literally labelling these tournaments in a misleading manner. In fact, directly misleading. If you read that, you would think, right, it's a major, so those are majors. I've heard about majors before. Oh, this is a Premier, so it's not a major. Premier would actually sound worse than major in the context of these two games, where the biggest and most important tournaments in the scene are called majors. Obviously, the international's bigger than all of them in Dota 2, but below the international are the majors. Now, this is even worse for someone who's a complete pleb and knows nothing. If they Google it, they're going to get completely the wrong information and characterization. Imagine someone in the future looking some information up and seeing, oh, I see that RTZ won 4 majors. Holy shit. Well, if you say that to a Dota 2 fan, unless he goes on to win actual majors, you're going to sound like an idiot. In fact, you'll be completely wrong. I care about that sort of thing. That's one of the best reasons for these Wikipedias and online archives to exist, so that people can look up the game and appreciate and explore the history from years after the fact. That's one of the things I had a lot of enjoyment on Liquipedia itself when I first got into StarCraft Brood War. If it wasn't for a site like Liquipedia or the great final edits articles written on the Team Liquid website, I don't know if I would have explored Brood War history as much, because I wouldn't have known the context and how incredible it was, and been able to very quickly look at what all the different great players did in history and get a sense for who they were, but not in games outside of StarCraft for these very reasons. I mean, there was a literal example of this kind of silliness causing a problem where at Season 3 Worlds, the Season 3 World Championship in League of Legends, there was a situation where on the analyst desk, you had Monte Cristo, you had Double Lift, legendary AD carry, and you had Crepo, at the time one of the better support players from Europe. And when they asked for the predictions, what happened was, cause Monty was going for SK Telecom, the dominant number one Korean team, number one team in the world, best team at the tournament at that point in time, heavy favourite to win the best of 5 final. Cosmonti was picking them, and at the time he casted the Korean region and people called him like Korean dick sucker and implied that, you know, he was biased. The others on the desk, cause the venue was the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California in the United States of America, and obviously it's the English language broadcast, and there's a lot of fans who viewed Korea as like the evil empire and were rooting for anyone but Korea to win. The other people on the desk decided, I would consider it in an ill-advised fashion, that they would all pick Royal Club as the other team in the finals, a surprise finalist, by the way, not even considered the best team in China coming into the tournament. They picked this team to win the final and said that it would be a Royolution or whatever the fuck they said. All sorts of ridiculous shit. Now, as a result of this, the majority of the desk picked the underdog Royal to win, and instead SK Telecom went on to win 3-0, stomped the final, and there actually were multiple mainstream journalists. I saw one like last year who made articles in which they mentioned that the final was a big upset because the experts had picked this Chinese team to win, and instead what they described as the underdog Korean team SK Telecom surprised everyone, shocked the world, and won the final. Now that is obviously literally the opposite of the characterization of what should have been made, of what actually happened, of what was a reasonable take on that final. Now, obviously that's slightly different to this Liquipedia aspect, but the point is someone could easily look that up, a mainstream journalist, and get exactly the same problem. The exact same issue could occur. So there's an old adage, I forget exactly how this quote goes, I couldn't find the quote when I googled because these terms are just too vague for Google, but it went something along the lines that to make a mistake is one thing, but to fail to correct a mistake is to make another mistake. And so in that context, when Liquipedia doubles down and continues to use this labeling system, they are not just making a mistake. Every single time they put one of these tournaments in there as one of those labels, they are making an additional mistake, and then when they refuse to correct and admit to and update the mistake, they are making another mistake. So in that sense, Liquipedia is a never-ending mistake in this very specific regard. Now, the solution is simple and obvious. Just recast the entire terminology, taking this into account. Change it so that every tournament's a major if it's the biggest tournament. Or change it so there is no major, it's just Premier, and the second tournament is called something else, semi-pro. I don't know what you want to call it at that point in time. Just make sure this mistake, this misunderstanding doesn't occur. But the problem is, it isn't really that simple, is it? I mean, I would just say, why not just even do it for CSGO and Dota 2? Wouldn't that make it a problem? Make it a solution? But this is the problem. people involved with Liquipedia and Team Liquid have shown a tendency to be arrogant, aloof, stubborn, cut off their nose to spite their face on numerous different things, such as not having a League of Legends section back in the day when many people wanted it, but then magically opening one when they get a League of Legends team. So I personally don't think it will happen. I've had this discussion many times. I've even brought it to Liquipedia people many times. At this point in time, we're talking about like half a decade ago I was bringing this stuff up, and they still didn't really care about it. It's never going to change as far as I can tell. They will continue to make the same mistake. Now, I care about this because having a good historical record is key. Having one people can search, even better. There is so little online that there's no point having what is online be misleading and disingenuous when Liquipedia could be the authority on most of these issues. This video was generously supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Butt Pounder 420, JDubs, Chi Mao, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Now, do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my work? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers for who the guests are on my upcoming content? Maybe you want to take part in a monthly esports discussion with yours truly. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.